Hey guys, so for today, we are going to do the rest of section 2.3, dealing with how in the world do you rationalize denominators when you're dealing with powers of I. There's going to be a little bit different with the video today. I'm going to try to put some interactions in between where you're going to actually have to answer a question and during the video. So hopefully, and then I'll be able to grade it and see how everything's going. Hopefully that'll give you a little bit of a opportunity to do some practice problems more than just what's on here. Okay. Well, one of the things that we need to talk about is we need to talk about what if I is higher than 1? Because remember, we said we can never have a power of I higher than 1. Well, I rotates basically. I squared becomes, as we said before, becomes -1. I cubed is just -1 times the square root of -1, or negative I. And then I to the fourth is just plain old 1. But what about weird powers? Well, it's really easy. What you do is, if you have powers that are higher than 4 for I, divide the exponent by 4, and the remainder is the equivalent power of I. So if you do decimals, 0.25, the remainder happens to be 1. If the decimal is 0.5, the remainder is 2. If the decimal is 0.75, the remainder is 3. And if it's 0.0, the remainder is 0. So the answer will be 1, because anything to the 0 power is 1. Okay, so I to the 7th. Well, what is I to the 7th? Well, what you can do is you can divide by 4. So 4 into 7. 4 into 7 goes 1 time. Subtract your 4, and then you have 3, and this is your remainder. So this is basically the same thing as I to the 3rd power. I to the 3rd. I to the 13th, we'll do the same thing. 4 goes into 13, it goes in there 3 times, minus 12 gives me a remainder of 1. So this is just plain old I. Okay. I to the 14th, well, that's going to be 4 into 14. And that's going to go 3 times once again, minus 12 gives me 2. Okay, so that's going to be the same thing as I squared, which we have told you was what? -1. And this is -1I over here. And then 32, well, that's just simply 4 into 32, which is 8 times, minus 32 is 0. So that's just plain old what? 1. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. All right, now how do you rationalize denominators with I? Well, just like we have with square roots, we cannot have an I in the denominator. Just like with square roots, we can't have a square root in the denominator. So how do we rationalize it? Well, if I have just an I multiply the numerator and the denominator by I. If there are 2 terms, which is a binomial, I need to multiply by the conjugate. Guys, what's the conjugate of 2 plus 8i? Hopefully you wrote down, or you answered, 2 minus 8i in your interactions. Okay? So, looking at problem number 29, I have 11 over 6i. This is a monomial. 6 times I, that's a monomial. So I'm just going to multiply by I. I don't have to multiply by 6i, guys. I just have to multiply by I, because I is what I want to get rid of. I don't want to get rid of the 6. So 11 times I, that's 11i. And then 6 times I is 6i squared. Well, guys, all of you know what I squared equals. Okay? Hopefully when you did this interaction, you wrote I squared equals -1. So this becomes 11i times 6 times -1, or The negative can go up top, that's not a problem. Negative 11I over 6. So for number 30, we're going to do the same thing. This is a monomial, so we multiply by I and only I. Again, we don't care about the 7, that can stay there. It's the I we got to get rid of. So this becomes negative 10I over 7I squared, or negative 10I over negative 7. What happens if you have a negative divided by a negative? Well, hopefully you all realize that negative divided by negative is a positive, so this just becomes 10I over 7. Okay. Now let's move on to something a little bit trickier. Now we have binomials in the bottom. Here's a question for you that I want you to answer. Why is 5 plus 6i a binomial? What makes it a binomial? Okay. Now, remember, once we know that it's a binomial, we'll have to multiply by the conjugate. The conjugate of 5 plus 6i is 5 minus 6i. And some of you had a problem doing this in our homework the other day, so I want to take our time and go through this one. At the top, you're going to take 12 times this whole thing, so you have 12. Another way to write this is 12 times 5 minus 6i. Okay, so we're going to distribute. What is 12 times 5? Okay, that is 60. Okay. Then what is 12 times negative 6i? Well, 12 times negative 6 is negative 72. And then the I is just there. So I have 60 minus 72i. Now, how do I multiply 5 plus 6i by its conjugate, 5 minus 6i? Well, this is a binomial times a binomial, and you know how to do that. That's foiling. Once again, why do we multiply by the conjugate, guys? So, when we multiply, we have 5 times 5, which is 25. Okay. Then we have, remember, we multiply by the conjugate because you just answered this question. We multiply the conjugate because that gets rid of the middle terms. So then all we have to worry about is 6i times negative 6i. So that's going to be negative 36, but what's I times I, guys? That's I squared. Okay. So I've got 25 minus 36 times negative 1. Well, that gives me 25 plus 36, because a negative times a negative is a positive. And what's 25 plus 36? That is 61. So those of you that had some problems with this particular problem on your homework the other day, the reason that you had that problem is because, one, you didn't realize that they were conjugates, and for another, the I squared does disappear. Okay, so you do get an actual number, no matter what you. Some of you thought when you got an actual number that you did it wrong, but you didn't. You actually did it right. So I now have the top part, 60 minus 72i, over the bottom part is 61, and guys, that's all I can do. There's nothing I can simplify there. All right. So let's take a look at number 34. We'll slide on over here. Try to make this a little bit bigger for you. Okay. So again, I'm going to multiply by the conjugate. The conjugate of 4 minus 6i is 4 plus 6i. I'm going to focus on the numerator. Notice I have a 6i here. That's fine. It's 6i times the quantity 4 plus 6i. You still have to distribute just like you normally do. 6i times 4 is going to be 24i. And then I'm going to have 6i times 6i, which is 36i squared. But once again, the I squared, what happens? The I squared is negative 1, so this actually is 24i minus 36, because 36 times negative 1. But again, this isn't in the form that we like. So we're going to change it. We're going to rearrange it. Negative 36 plus 24i. So now our numerator's done for right now. Now let's take a look at our denominator. Well, I've got 4 minus 6i times 4 plus 6i. And again, I just have to worry about multiplying the front and the back because these are conjugates. So I have 16 minus 36i squared. Or that's 16 plus 36. Remember, I squared makes negative, and a negative times a negative is a positive. 36 plus 16 is 52. So I now have my numerator divided by 52. Now, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully all of you recognize that there is a number that goes into all three of these numbers. So let's divide everything by that number, and hopefully you realize it's 4. So we're going to simplify this by dividing everything by 4. Well, negative 36 divided by 4 is negative 9. 24 divided by 4 is 6, so I have plus 6. The I stays there. And 52 divided by 4 is 13. And I have now simplified. This is our new answer compared to that. Okay. Well, what happens when we have two binomials? What about number 36, Mr. Drum? That's a good question, guys. We're going to multiply the top and the bottom by the conjugate of the bottom. So I'm going to have 5 plus 6i over 5 plus 6i. Okay? And then I'm going to multiply them and distribute them. Okay? So 2 times 5 is 10. I do have to worry about my middle terms now because they're not, the top is not a conjugate of each other. So I did 2 times 5. Now I'm going to do 2 times 6i, which is 12i. Then I'm going to do 7 times 5i, or 7i times 5, which is 35i. And then I'm going to do 7i times 6i. Well, 7 times 6 is 42, and I times I is I squared. So I've got 10 plus 12i plus 25i. And remember, what happens with the I squared? Well, that's negative 1, so this, instead of being positive 42, is now minus 42. So what do I do? 10 minus 42, negative 32, plus 12i plus 25i is 37i. Okay? No, it's not. It's 47i. This is a 3. There we go. So that's my numerator. Negative 32 plus 47i. Now my denominator, because I'm multiplying by the conjugate in the denominator, and these two are exactly the same except for the plus or minus, again, I don't have to worry about my middle two terms. So what do I end up with? I end up with 25 minus 36i squared, or 25 plus 36, or 61. So I now have an answer of negative 32 plus 47i over 61. Guys, and that's all we're doing. Okay, that's all we're doing for this one. This is a good place to end third term. A couple of important things. Your grade for this term is basically what you did beforehand. I mean, I've included everything that you've done online. I have to have your grades done on Thursday. There's nothing that's happening. I mean, you guys have no school on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. So I'm going to post a little Quizlet for you on Wednesday that you need to take on Wednesday. Sometime it's going to be due probably about noon on Thursday. That way I can get my grades in. Okay? And it'll be online. It'll be like five short questions based on sections 2, 1, and 2, 3. I'm also going to be posting a video tomorrow, or actually I'm recording this on Sunday, so I'll be posting a video on Monday showing you 3 or 4 of the problems that you guys had problems with as far as the homework goes and how to work it out in both of them. So I mean, you know, you've only had a couple of problems, so there's not going to be a whole bunch of meat to work out for you. And your assignment is going to get posted on Tuesday, and it'll be a short assignment, you know, about 5 problems of doing some of this. So hopefully you guys are feeling like you're getting an idea of what this is all about, and we're going to keep moving along. And then once we come back from the Easter break, we're going to start picking up the pace a little bit, I think. All right. Hope you guys have a great day.